Hey guys, so some of the Jeans went to Italy for a little bit of rest and relaxation. Is it just me, or does it seem like all of a sudden everybody seems to go to Italy like in the same time frame, or is everyone just always going to Italy? Well, in any event, the New Jeans girls, two of them, Honey and Minji, said that they wanted to go to a place to just sort of get their mind off of things and somewhere where they wouldn't be recognized. I think perhaps maybe they're trying to do an eat, pray, love type of situation. Remember, Julia Roberts in the movie went over there, ate a bunch of pizza, and then had to buy a pair of new jeans because they're probably so sick of rinsing and repeating the same legal arguments, rinsing and repeating, washing them jeans to try to make them new again and give the old tired arguments new life. And the same thing just happens every time it comes out of the washer and dryer. Denied, denied, and denied yet again by the court on their appeal. So how often are you supposed to wash jeans? Apparently every 4 to 6 wears, which they average out to about every 4 to 6 weeks, and wouldn't you know, that's essentially the average amount of time between hearings in the court. So every time they're going back to another hearing, they gotta rinse and repeat. And with the injunctions though, it does happen a little bit faster in the cycle. I've seen where you're supposed to wash your jeans every 3 to 10 wears. So maybe they're, every 3 for an injunction. So the injunction, of course, we went over how it was ruled in ADOR's favor that New Jeans needs to stop running off and trying to do their own activities, making their own deals, doing their own performances without the partnership of ADOR as per their agreement. New Jeans had immediately appealed that, and before it went to an appeals court, they were going to re-look at the evidence to see if there was any legal mistakes made or if there was some evidence that wasn't properly accounted for. Well, the initial court already did that, and they said, no, this injunction stands. New Jeans, you really have to stand down. And so the first court yesterday confirmed that they're not going to change their decision. So now New Jeans has the right to appeal to the high court. So that's the appeals court, and that's going to go into motion at the same time as the continued hearings on their bigger lawsuit with ADOR about validating the contract. So again, the injunction was to essentially just put an immediate halt on New Jeans going off and doing their own thing. And then the bigger lawsuit is to say, look, we're going to confirm the validity of the contract. At its core, it's essentially the same issue, but in practicality, stopping the going off and doing your own thing has been seen as valid by the court, saying that, okay, we haven't resolved your issue with your contract, so until that's resolved, you need to put a break on it, because which most likely it will be, in 3 years, the contract is valid, but you've been off doing all this illegal activity for 3 years, that doesn't look good in how the law functions or just in the spirit of justice, so it makes sense. So the judge, in their decision to say, like, look, the injunction is valid, go to another court, said that even while keeping in mind the claims and supporting materials that the New Jeans members are repeatedly emphasizing through this appeal, rinse and repeat, by reading through the records, one can judge that this injunction decision is just. So, New Jeans, stop trying to rinse and repeat. But New Jeans' legal representative said that we will continue to diligently participate in the legal proceedings to come and do our utmost so that the facts can be clearly revealed. But what facts and what clarity? What facts haven't been presented already? I mean, this thing is like clear as mud, or it's extremely clear that you're just trying to keep stretching out this cookie dough recipe with just more and more flour and no more sugar, right? Because it's that sugar that was moving things. And so you're going to get dog biscuits in the end. And shields, probably tough as shields. Because let's transition into what's been going on with New Jeans Mama, because it really did work. That New Jeans, the 5 girls, were the shields for the 6-member New Jeans Mama, because we barely talked about all of her issues, and she has more legal suits than the New Jeans girls. And I do really feel bad that we had to wait until this long to talk about the ADOR employee who had been at odds over workplace bullying and being dragged for filth publicly by New Jeans Mama, when New Jeans Mama was just basically using her as a pawn to get more leeway or headway in her overall battle with HYBE and ADOR. And this ruling late last month, a few weeks ago, did not go in Min Hee-jin's favor. So officially to the Korean government, by all accounts, New Jeans Mama is classified as a grade A bully, the kind that you do not want to work with, according to the latest decision made by the Ministry of Employment and Labor. Reportedly, she has been fined, according to the employee who brought this complaint. Min Hee-jin says that, this fine hasn't been completely finalized, and so the way that the media has been reporting on it is not necessarily the full truth. So it may be neither here nor there, but essentially she did not win. So the employee said that thank you to the Ministry of Employment and Labor in recognizing that Min Hee-jin's misconduct was at a high level. The percentage of recognized workplace bullying cases is only 12%. So it's really hard to get a designation by the Ministry of Employment and Labor to say that, yes, you who are complaining about workplace bullying, we agree. They only agree about 12% of the time. And apparently this number is actually a lot lower once you count in all the people who once they file a claim, they kind of drop their case out, either out of settlement or being bullied. And so this 12% actually is a little bit higher than the actual real amount of cases that initially come into the ministry. A lot of people just say, cancel. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up. And so she's saying that this is great and that Min Hee-jin was a big bully. So who is this girl? Remember, she was the girl that was repeatedly referred to in these public Kakao Talk messages by Min Hee-jin. Min Hee-jin was dragging this girl for filth because this girl had not been successful inside of ADOR when she brought up her complaints about bullying and harassment in the workplace. So the harassment part, the bullying part, the investigation part was back in the fall and winter of 2023. And then so she just said okay, fine. I'm not getting anywhere with this. Even HYBE is agreeing with Min Hee-jin, so I gotta go. So she had left. She was willing to let bygones be bygones, and she didn't press the case further until the summer of 2024, after Min Hee-jin was just peeling out all this stuff. This employee was not the one bringing it out to the public. She just wanted to leave it behind. It was an unfair situation, but she's moving on to another job. And then here it is. Min Hee-jin is using her name, her case, her situation, and the victim was saying everybody put 2 and 2 together because they knew I worked at ADOR. They knew that this happened to me. They know that I'm the one that she talking about. And This employee said that she gave Min Hee-jin 4 chances, 4 opportunities, 4 very public opportunities to apologize. Min Hee-jin did not apologize. Oh no, what'd she do instead? She sued. Min Hee-jin sued the victim back again. So then now this victim, like, remember what we saw? Like, she took to Instagram, she made her own Instagram page, and she's giving updates, she's spilling the tea, she's like putting out all the receipts. And now it looks like she had been successful in her fighting back in the first step of this with the Ministry of Employment and Labor. And so this fine could be up to 5 million Korean won, so it's about $3,700. And so this report says that the ministry partially acknowledged Min Hee-jin's responsibility in mishandling the harassment case, and also that Min Hee-jin's repeated remarks in October and December 2023 went beyond appropriate work boundaries. She didn't have no boundaries. She had a shaman sitting, like, about to be sitting, like, transferring the spirit of her shaman, her dead sister who was in the shaman, into a new employee that was going to sit next to her. So, like, the woman didn't have boundaries, and may have caused physical and emotional distress or worsened the working environment. So remember, Min Hee-jin had coached and helped her top-level executive who was being accused of harassment to write his report, say the right things. And so authorities said that, yeah, this violated her obligation to conduct an objective investigation. Now, Min Hee-jin's lawyer says that there is actually a difference between workplace bullying and making the appropriate measures to do a good job in an investigation. So it looks like they're trying to wiggle out of this, saying like, yeah, she wasn't really good at investigating, because she's such a New Jeans mama. She's focused on like branding concepts and merchandising and, which bubblegum to be chewing for the right tint in the music video. And so, of course, she wouldn't know how to investigate, but that's different than workplace bullying. So they're trying to make a line between workplace bullying and whether you can actually do a good investigation, whereas the Ministry of Labor and Employment seems to have been saying like, look, it's all of the above. Nevertheless, it was not a victory for her, and she's got a lot more up the pike. Now, we do know that there is Source Music lawsuit, a B-Lift lawsuit, an ongoing police investigation that was filed by HYBE against Min Hee-jin for breach of trust. The Source Music lawsuit, the B-Lift Lab lawsuit, they both started in January on the same day. So no wonder Min Hee-jin didn't show up and just let her lawyers handle it, because she'd be schlepping back and forth from all these courtrooms and she'd be looking like a frazzled mess anyway on her best day. What's gonna be when she'd be sitting on those hard benches and trying to do a body lobby and not just as a hobby? So the Source Music lawsuit is for 500 million Korean won, about 395,000 US dollars. And this was in response to dragging Source Music down, dragging LE SSERAFIM down. Because remember when Min Hee-jin said Source Music was to blame for the delay of New Jeans because they were just trying to favor LE SSERAFIM, when that wasn't the case whatsoever. When it was Min Hee-jin dragging her heels, spending too much time with her shaman, spending too much time on Project 1945 and not enough time on Project N or Project New Jeans. Delaying, there's all these receipts and paper trails of everybody in the entire HYBE building asking, where is the concept document? Where are the finalized plans? And she kept delaying and delaying and delaying. And that's probably why she had to take a little Google trip to Mexico and be like, ooh, jeans, new, done, TLC, kind of give some flavor. So Source Music was not pleased at being branded as the bullies, being branded as irresponsible, and having LE SSERAFIM's very nascent career at that time being damaged by Min Hee-jin's big press conference. Not only that, remember Min Hee-jin said that, oh, all the girls from New Jeans, they came to HYBE because of me. When already it's been documented that most of the members had already been signed under Source Music and been recruited by the Source Music team, and that she had come in like during the final act, probably brought in one or two members. It looks like it was like half of one and maybe one complete. And then she decided to take all the girls, steal them, and then put them in her own company, ADOR, and then boom, recreate the origin story. But Source Music ain't having none of that. So that was January 10th, 2025 for the first hearing. The second hearing was supposed to be last month, about a month ago on March 14th, but Source Music wanted to postpone for additional preparation. So here you go again. This is a way to drag out the lawsuit. So believe you me, that Source is probably orchestrating with B-Lift and HYBE to make the timing of all of this stuff as painful as it can possibly be and as long as it can possibly be for New Jeans Mama. New Jeans Mama are going to be turning into New Jeans Grandma by the time this is done. And so the next hearing is going to be May 30th. That's going to be a big day. Now let's move on to the B-Lift Lab lawsuit, which is a lot bigger, 4 times bigger, 2 billion Korean won, or about $1.4 million. And this lawsuit centers on Min Hee-jin's accusations that B-Lift Lab's eyelet plagiarized New Jeans, their concept, their style. And so this first hearing also happened on January 10th. And of course, Min wasn't there. Min Hee-jin wasn't there. And B-Lift Lab refuted these claims. They said that eyelet's branding strategy and concept were finalized and shared internally in July 2023. Min Hee-jin was cleverly trying to, put a little bit of this pixie dust to blind our eyes by saying like, well, it has been proven that eyelet had gotten our branding deck for New Jeans, but that happened way after eyelet had put out their branding deck. And there is absolutely no proof, even when the eyelet team got the New Jeans branding deck, like what that was for. Like what was it for? It could have just been they wanted to print it out and, make a paperweight out of it. Then she's making accusations that they were trying to copy the concepts, but the concepts had already been finalized. And then a month and a half afterwards, they got the branding deck for whatever reason over email. And that was it. But of course, Min Hee-jin filed a counter lawsuit against B-Lift Lab, alleging defamation and under the Information and Communications Network Act, and she wants 5 billion Korean won, or approximately 3.6 million US dollars. So she's suing for like way more, like about double, a little bit more than double what B-Lift Lab is suing her for. So she's trying it. Now this makes it very complex, I think, for her lawyers, and maybe this is also why the Source Music team wanted to delay till May 30th, because the next hearing date is also May 30th for B-Lift Lab. So this is like very stressful, I think, for Min Hee-jin's legal team, because on the same day they're gonna have to show up and argue these two cases, and that's kind of it's not impossible, but it sounds expensive, and it does still add a layer of complexity that can put her at a disadvantage. Now, that ongoing police investigation that still seems to be open against Min Hee-jin, but we have seen a stall, at least publicly, in the police investigation. Remember, she had like her 8-hour-long police investigation and interrogation session, and then she waltzed out of there as if she did such a good job. Of course, that was kind of a media play. And then the police said that, well, she just kept talking nonstop. We couldn't even ask her questions. We need to bring her in again. But no updates on whether they actually brought her in again. But we did get updates from the police saying they're like, oh, they want to wait to see how the lawsuits pan out. That to me is a big red flag. What does that mean? The police should be doing their investigative job regardless of what's going on in the court in other cases that are not directly related. What that signals to me is that they want to just follow where the wind is blowing instead of being the wind blowers or finding the actual evidence. So this makes it look so sus that the police is just willing to just, oh, well, we'll just follow along with the winning team. And that again makes it so difficult to get behind the police when the police are arguing for more investigative power against the prosecution. Remember, there's always this war between the police and the prosecutors because the prosecutors get to take all the evidence usually from the police and then continue on with their own investigation and then make the final decision about the evidence. And then the criticism there is that, well, the prosecution can be bought. So like the police can do a very earnest job in investigating, and once they hand it to the prosecutors then they'll just make all the back deals. They get the money. The police in that case, sometimes it's more of like, oh, the police wants to be bought off, but they don't get the chance because they don't have the final, go round in the relay race. And so it just makes it harder to get behind the police when like the police should just be doing their job. And when we are criticized in the public for being too trigger happy with the police about like what's going on with this investigation, and thereby trampling on the privacy rights of a lot of the people being investigated, and then also due process by wanting to know what's going on. So then we've been told, okay, take a back seat, let the police do their job. But then this is a situation that shows why there's so much of this wanting to get updates from the police prematurely, because you want to see that the police is actually doing it and not just going to be at the end of this whole situation, just kind of like, laying low and then being like, oh, well, oops, there's nothing we can do. It's just too late, or not have done their job and then thereby subvert justice. So this is a very hard situation to be in when you want to hold these institutions accountable as somebody who's just like a regular citizen, just, going about their daily business, not thinking that they're going to have to then now be a supervisor of the prosecution and the police from their living room. But if the police were supposed to be doing their job, they would be continuing this investigation into Min Hee-jin for breach of trust, particularly because of her attempts to seize control of ADOR. And we already have now a public witness, the Davolink chairman himself, going out to the media, on his revenge campaign, being like, I got screwed over by this Jezebel, and she just is lying about this whole situation. I haven't heard the Davolink chairman going into the police to give his testimony. So of course, other parts of this complaint filed by HYBE in April 2024. So they've had a whole year to give us another update on this. Haven't heard anything. And that initial complaint had, of course, the Project 1945 as saying that was her detailed account of taking over and stealing management and rights of ADOR, and also the strategies, the evidence that they had with all the text messaging between Min Hee-jin and her vice CEO of trying to get outside investors, and then also getting the shaman to guide management decisions, which would be breach of trust, because when you hire a CEO, you're hiring them for them to make the decisions, not some shaman in the woods, on the weekends. And then also, of course, the complications related to BTS members' military service, like how she wanted to strike and, yank out ADOR and New Jeans while HYBE was vulnerable without BTS. So Min Hee-jin has also struck back on her own. She filed police reports against 5 HYBE executives, accusing them of defamation and leaking her private messages to the media, which the media was also quick to say, like, wait, girl, you leaked the messages first. Not only that, while you were leaking them, you called them dog, bleep, 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 M bleepy F bleepy ers. She did last month giddy up in like a covered wagon as if she's going on the Oregon Trail like a pioneer for justice, and say that she won this defamation lawsuit against online commenters, which is really rich because her representation, her whole infrastructure and team is accused of being like a bot farm of just hate against everybody, regular people and also fellow artists within the same company that she was working in, or the same holding company. And so 4 individuals had to pay fines, and 4 individuals were not found to be guilty. She sued 8 people, and it was more like it seemed like the judge or the judgment was sort of making fun of her, and it seemed like the media coverage of it was making fun of her, because the damages, the amounts that the 4 guilty people had to pay ranged from 50,000 won to 100,000 won, which is essentially $34 to $69. Like, so it wouldn't have even cover the cost of the paper clips of her lawyers filing all this business. And but Min Hee-jin said, like, oh, it was such a victory. But what was really shady was they outlined which comments in particular were guilty and which comments in particular were not guilty, which sort of means that, like, yeah, it's not. Well, is it true? Does that mean the court thinks it's true? I think the court is just saying that it's not defamatory. On the other hand, it kind of makes it sound like, oh, well, maybe she is. So the comments that were no-go, like, you're not supposed to say this, like 3 letters that essentially say she's a crazy bee, and it wasn't even spelled out, but that was not correct, and that had the particularly highest compensation amount, which meant the court thought that was the worst, the crazy part. So see how, like, being labeled crazy still in the court of law has this higher category of being more damaging to a person, which again, that's why people don't want to be labeled crazy, don't want to go to seek mental health, but then they get more crazy because then they're more afraid of not being labeled crazy, and it's crazy. So that was $69. Somebody who said, I want to punch her. So again, 3 letters that don't actually say she's a crazy bee, but like you just kind of interpret, oh, those three letters basically stand for, oh, she's a crazy bee, is more damaging than if somebody says, I want to punch her, like actually have physical violence, because that was a $34 fine. And then effing piece of excrement, that's also $34. And then a psycho bee is $34. So crazy bee is $69 and psycho bee is $34. However, what's $0? Cunning bee. So you could be a tricky bee. You can call people, oh, she's tricky. She's tricky. And that's $0. So that's for free. But if you say psycho, then that is going to be $34. So the next big legal date is going to be May 30th. So set your calendars on Korea time. That's going to be the next hearing for B-Lift Lab and Source Music. And it looks like B-Lift and Source are going to be bringing tons of receipts. They've had ample time. And from the way it seems as if, how Le Seraphim, Islet, they're just killing it out there and they're just often doing their own things, you can feel how they seem like a whole weight has been taken off their shoulders and they're just thriving out there. But really, I want to know what is going on with that police investigation and why still have we not had a definitive answer or a very high pressured question about your laptop, Min Hee-jin. Where did your laptop go? We all know it's probably gone and it's probably irretrievable, but we want to hear from your own mouth. What happened to it? Where is it? What did you do with your laptop? All right, guys, are you also curious about what she did with her laptop? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.